Hello friends of Cosmic Agency. My name is Gosha, and in this video I am going to shortly, very shortly, I hope so, explain to you, to those who don't know and are still asking, where is the Taygetan team? Where is Yazhi? Where is Athena? Where is Mari? And why did I decide to make this video? Well, because I see in the comments over and over again that some of you are asking, where is Mari? Why isn't she publishing? Where is the Taygetan team? And I try to explain in a few sentences, always respond, or not always, wherever I see it. But that's why I decided to make this video. It's been, well, almost 2 years. Now I'm going to get into that, from their disappearance. And some of you probably didn't see the explanation of our announcement of what happened around that time and why we dissociate ourselves from whatever was going on in the channel called SWARUUNIan Official. So that was a long 3-hour video. If you want to watch that, yes, it was a big dramatic situation, but that's just how things are. Sometimes it had to be explained. So today I'm not going to go into all of this. I'm just going to give you a short recap to all of you who are asking, where is Mari? Where is Yazhi? Where are the Taygetans? Where we don't know where they are. That's the short answer. Around 2024, towards the end, but we cannot pinpoint the date exactly, but toward the end, things started shifting and changing, and the last time we actually heard from Yazhi and Athena was November 2024, or what we believe were Yazhi and Athena at the time. So this is the time that we allocate to the disappearance of the team, to the disappearance of the communication. Because we continue to have some communication for a few months after that with the so-called CIC, which later turned out to be human. I will get into that, so we don't count that period. Now, in the last conversation that I had with Athena, she was explaining how the new military group was coming in, and this is important because this is going to, it's going to be something that we are going to always remember when analyzing everything else that was happening. She said that there is a new group of military guys, military people who are not friendly, are not supposed to be friendly. And that's why explaining to us, do not expect much from them because they are coming here for different objectives, which is totally understood. But then she said something that triggered our distrust later on as well. She said, we do not fully trust these new Taygetans, she said, but that's what we have for the moment. These were her last words, or this was her last conversation. After that, she disappeared. She never came back. Yazhi was not online either, disappeared. Her last words, in fact, were around October 2024, where she was expressing her curiosity or preoccupation, I'm not sure, about Matthias. She was asking, where is Matthias? Because he actually left one of our server groups. Long story why, he just wasn't needed there anymore, so he removed himself from there. That group was made for our lives, when I was doing the lives and the questions were passed. So Yazhi said, why did Matthias leave the server? And her face was sad and she left a heart. That was the last time. After that, like I said, we continue to have communication from the so-called CIC, which later it was discovered, which they actually admitted it was a human group. It was admitted by who? By Mari's vast channel herself. But anyway, I'll go back to that. So since this was such a long story I explained in a 3-hour video, it's hard for me to summarize this very fast. But basically, it was a very slow but dramatic shift away from everything that has been done so far, or maybe not everything, but a lot of things that have been done by SWARUUNIan of Rabbi Anneka, a slow but dramatic shift toward a different type of a narrative, so to speak, and we started to notice a lot of congruency shifts. The congruency was just changing towards everybody, toward the whole disclosure, toward the whole group. And that started with the lack of congruency and appreciation towards what was done by Svaruovera, Aneka, also us. And it was done very, 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 very slowly. And Alanim of Temer was eliminated, put in the pod. Then Toleka was sent back to Taygeta. Then the whole team was also bad-mouthed, basically, which I don't know the inner stories, okay? I cannot confirm how much of that was actually true or not, but the point is that it was a slow dismantling of the whole team and the whole disclosure and the appreciation for that disclosure and for the people involved over time. Bad-mouthing the past, bad-mouthing the crew, and also in the end, of course, us as well, which we kind of tolerated for a while because yes, we did notice, and you did notice as well, there was this slow and then not so slow dissociation from us. And not only dissociation, but like this coldness and bitterness and just bad energy towards us, which we did not understand at all where it was coming from. But we tolerated that because, well, it wasn't about us after all. We were saying to ourselves, well, this is not about us. This is a different person. Mari comes to her position. She is a different person. She has different values. She has different opinions. The whole team around her changed as well. So we try to understand and always justifying as much as possible because we were saying to ourselves, well, if they are doing the good for the earth, this is all that matters. How they treat us in the process or what they even think about the whole crew or about this and that, it's okay if the results are going to be beneficial and positive for the earth. That's why we did not say anything until July 2025. So, going back, the last conversation we had with Athena was November 2024. We see this as the end of the communication that disappeared mysteriously. Then CIC, supposed CIC, was in contact, brief contact, strange contact, on and off, weird contact for 2 months or so. But we don't count that. And our announcement of dissociating ourselves from what was going on in Mari's channel, whatever was going on, and dissociating with this new group, that announcement came in July 2025, and you can see that video. It's a 3-hour video where I explain all this in much detail. But like I said, from 2024 November to July 2025, we didn't say anything because we were just analyzing and observing the situation, and we didn't want to come to any conclusions because we didn't know. We didn't have facts. We had just elements that were piling up that we were writing down, all these elements I mentioned in that 3-hour video. But we basically put our feelings aside and we were just thinking, okay, like I said, if they are doing the good things, it's okay. It's all okay. We totally put our feelings aside here. Because I'm saying this because people are saying that our announcement was because our feelings were hurt. No, totally. Our announcement was based on, now I'll tell you what it was based on. It was based on a sense of responsibility towards the community. Our feelings were already moved long before that, but we put them aside. So we saw the values changing. The ethics was different. Something was very wrong. The information was changing. The videos that were constantly being repeated, like a Frankenstein type of videos, like Robert said, from before. Putting pieces together from previous packages, previous videos. It was just very strange. But now, why did we finally decide to make the announcement? The reason why we finally decided to make this announcement in July 2024-5 about the infiltration, what we believe was that some kind of hijacking of the team, was when Mari or whoever, I don't know, someone who was operating through Mari's channel started to manipulate, because that's what it was, the community for money. Money for rescues. Money for rescues of children and people in the dumps. In other words, they started to say that without the collaboration from the people on Earth, without their donations, they are unable to continue with those rescue operations. Now, this was a huge red flag for us, and huge lack of congruency of what we knew about the team, about the Taygetans, about their protocols from before. Because I remember Aneka had problems with telephones because they had to have codes to enter our, software chat problems. It had to be confirmed by the SMS or something. And they didn't have phones, and we were offering them get prepaid phones, then get the codes. And I remember Aneka, it was 2020, was very reluctant about this, because she said their protocols are about not accepting anything from people on Earth. They cannot be resorting to people offering things of this kind. They need to be able to figure out things on their own. And she was very reluctant. In the end, I think she accepted one prepaid phone code, but they were super, super hesitant about that. So go from that to basically making people feel guilty about not donating because otherwise there will be no rescues from the dumps. That was a huge discrepancy of values of what we knew about the Taygetans, about how they operated. Yes, it was a different group. You could say maybe they had different ideas, but it was just too much of a discrepancy. And this was this point that made us decide we have to speak up, because it's not anymore about our own treatment, our own involvement with them, whether they are, cold with us or not. Some people are saying this is because of that. This meant nothing in the end if they were doing good actions. But in the end, our responsibility was for the community. So one thing is treat us in a certain way and treat the past crews, Varu, Aneka, everybody else. But another thing is to actually have you involved and manipulate your feelings and have you donate for something that in the end we didn't know if it was even true. Now add to this that Aneka and Tina and everybody else was gone, so we didn't have any confirmation from them that this was indeed what was happening. Our responsibility at this point shifted from just speaking out because we saw some red flags here and there and that we didn't agree with how we were spoken about. But now the responsibility shifted toward protecting of the community, because what we saw, how they were treating the community, meaning you send us donations, otherwise we cannot continue with our rescue operations. This was too much for us. We feel very responsible for you guys. We feel responsible for what we share, for what we put out, and for how you are treated, and we are very protective over this community. We are protective over them as well, very much so. I mean, the good guys, our friends, but also over our community. And just things were not adding up here. And that was the moment when we finally decided this was the last straw. Now we do have to speak out, because you have to remember the lack of our statements or declarations in this topic was also being seen as us supporting that. But we had to be honest with ourselves and with the community. We felt that something was off here, and we had to. There was no choice. We had to speak out. Now, after we made this announcement in July, well, then what the responses that were coming from that channel actually confirmed to us that indeed we did the right thing, because there were just absurdities coming from that channel, responses about us, saying things like, for example, they were always doing this for the money. We were doing this for the money. When in fact, and I never said that before, but I only bring this into the context because it fits into the context, I was actually sharing half of my monetization on YouTube Cosmic Agency with them for 2 years. So them saying that we were doing this for the money and fame, that coming from the supposed same team that was taking my money, that made no sense to us at all. Misrepresenting our friendship and our dynamic and lying about how things were in our relationship. Something that I actually showed in my recent series behind the scenes. All these things confirm to us indeed that this is not them anymore behind this channel, because Yazhi and Athena and everybody that we knew, that knew us really, would have never said that. They would have never said we are doing this for the money if they are the ones taking part of that money. I was sharing that with them wholeheartly, and I do not regret, by the way. I do not regret. So whoever they were, those people behind Mari's channels, their ethics just did not align with ours. Because whatever we presented in our announcement, we didn't lie. We just presented what was there, the red flags that we saw. But their response was based on lies. We're doing this for the money. What kind of defense is that? We're doing this for the money. We're doing this for the fame. We are narcissists. We mistreat them. What? This confirmed to us these are not our friends behind that channel. And, we always say, and they always used to say as well, you have to make decisions based on the data you have. That's all you have. The elements and the data at hand. And you have to make decisions based on that, especially when so many people look up to us and see our lack of statements on the topic as a continuous support. So it was a huge burden on our shoulders. In fact, as I always say, this was the worst year of my life, 2025, especially, well, all of it, basically. But especially between January 2025, these last conversations with CIC, and July 2025, when we made the announcement, that was the time when we were like, oh my God, balancing. Do we say something? Do we not say something? Do we have enough data? Do we not have enough? What's our role here? What's our responsibility? Remember, we had no Athena or Yazhi. These were our only contacts for the last three or 4 years. They disappeared. And the last words from Athena was, we do not trust this new Taygetan group. So what are we supposed to think then? And suddenly they start to beg, basically demand money for rescues, because otherwise those rescues cannot be operational. What do you think you would have done in the same situation? If you are still thinking that I am the bad guy in this situation, put yourself in our shoes. On top of that, we discovered that supposed CIC that Mari herself was saying was extraterrestrials, that was another manipulation that they towards the community, turned out to be human, because that supposed Mari in the channel admitted they were humans. They were humans. But why then before they were saying this is a CIC Taygetan group that is going to give you, now listen to this, that is going to send you a personal individual thank you note for the donations. That is a huge manipulative move, because people were making donations on top of that because they wanted to receive a personal thank you note from the orbit, from the extraterrestrial person. And then whoever was operating Mari's channel admitted they were people on Earth, or people, or humans. And people who didn't agree with us still went on with that. I mean, how can you not at least get angry at least a little bit about that? Isn't that lack of ethics? This is just not a group, whoever they are, that is aligned with our standards and with our idea of integrity. So what happened then when Yazhi and Athena disappeared, November 2024, then we had that continuous something with the CIC that supposedly was then human. In February 2025, they put us on a standby mode. But then after we made the announcement finally in 2025, in July, we basically cut ties from that group. We left that server chat room where we were still there together. No talking, but we were on standby, but we were still there. So we just left. Left the room, and we don't want anything to do with whoever is there. Now, where are they? We don't know. We can just hope that they are okay. That's our primary concern. And well, and that one day we will know the truth, that we will know what happened. I think we deserve this, and we continue to carry that in our hearts. What happened? That whole situation was extremely stressful, but especially, like I said, because of the responsibility we felt towards you. We just didn't know how we are supposed to behave and act, and about that whole situation. So we were swallowing, so to speak, dealing with a lot of things, like I said, but the manipulation of people for money, for rescues, that was my, and you know what? This is not about money itself. It's another thing. As I said, I was helping them myself. I was understanding why at some point they needed money. I was happy to help and send half of that YouTube monetization to them. And fun fact, few weeks before that announcement that we made, I was so conflicted that I even tried to make a video. I even made a thumbnail for that video already. I shared that somewhere, explaining why extraterrestrials need the money. Because those teams that come here and operate on Earth, they do need money. They operate with money. So I understood that, and I was even going to make that video. But then we made that announcement in July, and that was that. So how does it actually relate to the disclosures happening? Because this is very strange. All this happened just before all these topics with the AI and the disclosures exploded as well. So one of my feelings that I have about this is that they were taken away because the supposed disclosure happening was already being plotted by whatever narrative is going to come out of these disclosures. And one of the reasons, I think, is just my thinking, was to eliminate our Taygetan friends team, so they have no opportunity to speak out on the subject, because they were calling out during the COVID times. They were calling it out. They were calling out and exposing the Federation. Well, imagine what would they be saying now about all these disclosures. You know, they would have the very strong opinions about this. I'm pretty sure. So one of the reasons why I think they were taken away was to remove their ongoing participation in the development of all these disclosures and UFO topics coming to light. I don't know. This is just one of my assumptions. It's just that it's not coincidental that they disappeared or were cut off just before this whole disclosure movement exploded. So, as I said, we can only hope they're okay, and that one day we will find the truth. From our side, nothing changed. See, this is also another thing. I remember Yazhi told me a long time ago when we were talking about how do you know when your soul leaves, or, for example, when you are disconnected from your pod or things like that. Well, I remember she told me, Gosha, the person would change. The values would change. The ethics, the interest would change. Well, they did change, but for them. Of course, you could say these were different people, but they were still supposedly the same race and the same team. So a lot of the values, like for example, not wanting to take any material help from the humans before. Alec didn't want to have our help with the phones. From that to wanting money from the people for their rescues, otherwise the rescues cannot be executed. That's a big shift. That's a big shift in congruency. So Yazhi telling me, Gosha, observe the change of values, change of ethics. So with that, I want to say, we are still here. We did not change. Our values are the same. Our ethics, our determination, our principles, our ideas hasn't changed. And our view of our Taygetan friends did not change either because of this situation. We are only exposing this, whatever happened, in the channel Swaru Oficial. So for those of you who are wondering, well, we had the last communication 2024, toward the end of 2024. Mari continued, whoever that was, continued, but it was like a very strange mix of videos, mixing the previous information. So we don't know exactly at what point to cut off the credibility of that channel. For us, it's around November 2024, and that's how you can see the transcripts on our website, and also November 2024. Of course, some of the information that came later could be still correct because it's mixed with what was shared before. I mean, they couldn't completely diverge into something else. But I don't know. And then why did that channel stop suddenly? We don't know. We don't know either. So if we know anything, we will tell you. And to those of you who do not agree with us or with our decision, just remember that we only had to make the decision based on what we had in hand, based on the elements and the data that we had. We didn't have access to other information. This is what we had. What would you have done in our position? Thank you very much, guys. This is it. And now I'm going to jump to Space Academy. By the way, this is for the new people. Please join my channel, Space Academy Sector Earth. It's not so new anymore. I was going to say my new channel. No, it's been like almost 2 years, but I'm very slow developing videos there because it takes a lot of time, where I develop all these concepts, stellar concepts, from the beginning for the people who are perhaps coming into these circles. So welcome, Space Academy Sector Earth. Join, subscribe. Thank you very much. I will see you there for the topic variety. Actually, the topic is most well-known extraterrestrial races. See you there.